Understanding the blend node will be super easy if you've ever previously used any kind of photo or video editing software. So essentially imagine a blender in where you mix ingredients to create something else, like you mix a banana and an apple and you create a smoothie, right? So that's the same exact principle, but with a node. You take a couple different images, you mix them using a certain set of parameters, and then you create something new. So before we dive into the lesson, let me show you this small surprise that I've got for you. There we go. So let's jump into Designer pretty quickly. And this is a really extensive project, but don't be daunted by it because it's super easy to understand. I'm going to guide you through. All right. So pressing F2 to position myself right there, please. It's not getting any closer. Okay, it's a bit bugged. So starting off with the blend modes, okay? To spawn a blend node, you can just create a blend node like that, or you can press spacebar B, and it's the first one, so press enter, and you'll be creating a blend node. And you'll see that it's got a couple parameters to it. It's got a foreground, a background, an opacity, and the output. And then you can see that there's a slider for the opacity. The blending mode, you can switch any blending mode here. The alpha blending, which it's never almost using in real-time VFX. And then the cropping, which is essentially cropping the images here and there, but it's just an extra option that's not used that much. So yeah, let me just delete that one. And so this is the first thing that we'll be creating with the blend node. This is the copy blending mode, okay? So you can see that if I import this bitmap and then connect it to the background of this blend node, I'm going to be using this as a background layer. So as in Photoshop, for example, you would have a base layer at the bottom, and that's the background image. And then I'd have this image of myself, and then it has transparency to it. So I can send it to the foreground, and it's going to be positioned in the foreground of the image. So now it looks like I'm right here. I can move myself around like that, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's the thing with this. It's pretty easy to understand, right? So now let's say that I want to use this image as background again, but I'm going to use this desaturated image as foreground. So if I preview the blend node, you'll see that there's no transparency to it, and that's why this desaturated image is covering the whole thing up. So I can set a transform node right here, connect this, and now I can move it without tiling. That's important, like that. And so if I preview the blend node, you'll see that right now there's two images existing on top of each other. So it's essentially like positioning an image on top of each other, right? If I now go ahead and just set this to the foreground, select these two input nodes, and then press X, I'm going to be switching the foreground with the background, and that's why you see those changing like that. Then if I access the opacity right here, that opacity slider, I'm going to be able to switch from the background to the foreground. So I'm essentially saying how much of that I want to be affected, right? So opacity 1 means that the foreground layer is fully opaque, and you'll be seeing everything that's on the foreground. And opacity 0 means that you're only seeing the background. If I remove the background, you'll be seeing transparent in this case, or you could set this to be a uniform color, like black, for example. And so if I crank up the opacity again, you see the effect that that is causing. All right, I feel like that's pretty basic and pretty easy to understand. Let's see another example in which I have this exact same bitmap, but then I have the image of myself, and I color corrected it a bit to better fit the image. And then I used some transforms and this as an opacity mask. So you see the effect that this creates. That's myself right behind there, and that's myself a bunch of times. So you can see that I have modified myself in those different versions. So this one here has just a bit of blur and a bit more desaturation to convey like the atmospheric type of fog effect. And that one is a bit more blurry even. So yeah, you can see that you can create some basic image editing with this, which is pretty great. And yeah, you can see that this is using this connected to the opacity. But for example, in one of those, I think it was this one, yeah, I'm not using the opacity mask. That's due to the fact that I want this to be the foreground. All of the copies of myself are set to the foreground. So in this first one, this is the image being used as a background. And then I mix myself in the foreground layer with this mask, which makes it look like I'm at the background of the characters, but I'm actually in the foreground, but with a carrot mask. So then, instead of using this image again, and this one to create another copy of myself for the foreground, I'm just using this one instead because it's the image that we have already processed, right? So it's like feeding the image up into itself, and it's going on and on and on and on. The thing with this is that this is Absence Designer, so I can adjust this. Like I can adjust the coloring and all the color parameters that you want to switch, and it will be applied to all of those. And now if I switch this one, so for example, desaturate the background image like that, you see that this change is applied to all the other ones. So let me connect that to the background, and you see that everything is black and white except for me. So you're starting to wrap your head around how everything is working together and interconnected in Designer. I hope so. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Let's now check the other blending modes, and as you can see, there's a bunch of them. And I'm gonna be showing you the ones that are mostly used in real-time VFX. So not to complicate everything up, the copy one is pretty easy to understand because it's something that's being put in top of something else. But with the other blending modes, we're coming in with math and some kind of operations that go into the blend node that you don't really need to understand to be able to create textures in real-time VFX. So let's create a blend node that has this image, which is essentially this shape right here. Let me just bring it down like that. Okay, this is the shape. It's a circle shape. And now I moved it a bit to the left and a bit to the right. So now if I use the add blend node, I'm adding this image with this image, and it's creating this image. The thing with this is that by adding, you're kind of like just adding the values that are positive, right? So if I have a black color, it's not going to be added because 0 plus 0 is still 0. But if I have a value that's white, that's 1, right? That's just basic maths. If I have 0 and I add 1, I'm getting 1. So that means that the difference between this picture and this picture is essentially that this bit here has white pixels. So those white pixels are being added right here on top of this image. If I was about to use the copy, you see that, yeah, I'm just copying the foreground image on top of the background image and vice versa. I can use the opacity right here like that. So you see the result that that's causing. But now I'm just adding. So to kind of add this shape here, I could also do it by switching this node here to be connected to the opacity, and that will make it so it's used as a mask, so it will allow the shape on top to be copied right there. But that's not what we intend to do in this add example. So yeah, just set this to add. So we are adding white with white, which makes this white binocular type of shape with the goggles thing that you can look really far away. I can't come up with the name of it now, but you get what I'm saying. So for this example, I just toned down the values of this circle. So it's like half the opacity, right? It looks like it's 50% gray. And now I'm adding this other one, which creates this result. So you can see that gray plus gray, they are adding in the image. The black stays the same, but there's white in the middle. And that's due to the fact that it's adding up the zone that you can find in between the circles. Like it's 0.5 in value and 0.5 in value, and then it becomes 1. So 1 means white, 0.5 means gray, and 0 means black. So it's essentially representing maths in the screen for you using pixels. So essentially that's the thing with the add. You need to know that each time that you add something up, everything will like kind of be operating based on that principle, right? You have to wrap your head around it. The best way to get to understand this is to get a couple images and just get to play with them. Just set this to add and see that right now this looks like I've been burned out in the photo, like as if this was like sunburn or something like that. And now if I set this to subtract, you'll see that this looks like a ghost type of image. So by doing this, even if you don't have any previous experience, you'll get to know what these do by intuition. You'll start learning why are these things happening and how everything relates together, right? In VFX, normally we won't be using that much color blending operations, but a lot of grayscale image operations. So add is an important one that's really used when it comes to VFX. And another one that's really used is the subtract. So in this case, instead of adding the values, I'm subtracting the values. So you can see that if I subtract this from this, I'm getting this. So now I can just switch the operation around, and now I'm removing this from this. So you can see that it looks like this dark sphere here is just cutting out this white sphere here. And that's the main thing with subtraction. Okay, I think you can get it pretty easily. This is just essentially the same. And in this other example, you can see that this is creating still like an almond shape right there at the middle. And that's just due to the fact that I'm using opacity. So if I set this to 1, it will remove the whole thing from this circle here at the right. But if I set this to 0.5, it's only gonna remove half of it, like half of the intensity, and then it's just gonna become gray. But you won't be able to see the circle in the left because that's being used as an operation, right? So you're kind of like using this dark spot right here, which is 0, and from 0 you are subtracting the white bits, which is essentially 1. So 0 minus 1 goes to straight to negative, and designer just makes it so it's 0, so it's just black and nothing's happening there. So in this case it's black and nothing's happening there because it's 0 and it won't go any darker than that, right? But what if you were about to use the subtract blend node in an actual texture with colors and whatnot? That's why I created these other examples right here. So you see that this is using the subtract operation, and this one is using a multiply, this one is using an add operation. So in this case, you see that this is the base image, all right? That's like a marble type of stony feel thing, a grunge type of image. And then I'm using this to convert this image from grayscale to color and blend it with this color, using this as an opacity. And I'm using this blending operation to kind of say, hey, use this mask to add this on top of this by using this operation. So in this case, it looks like something has been burned into the image, like the first thing I showed you with my photo. So it looks like it's burned into the photo, like it looks like sunburn of sorts, some kind of energy. Then this one has the exact same process, but instead is using the subtract. And so you'll see that, hey, why is there like green bits in this image? Well, you need to take into account the fact that this, if you invert this color, you're gonna get this one. And this is going negative, right? You're getting the negative colors out of that. So that's why on the image of myself being subtracted, I also look like a ghost, just because I look inverted, right? Let me just go ahead and use the invert color. And so you'll see that this is the exact same result that I'm getting. It's this, but using subtract, right? So that's the exact same thing. Just hit this back to copy. So you can better understand with that example why that's correct in this use case, but it might be going wrong when you use colors, because we are just creating shapes and masks here. But in other use cases, you will have to take this into account before creating a mess. All right, let's go with a multiply. So multiply essentially multiplies. So it says like 1 by 1 means 1. So wherever the 1 or the white is found in these two images, this will display something. But if you find zeros, which means black pixel, you will see nothing, because 0 by 1 is 0, 1 by 0 is 0, 0 by 0 is 0. So everything multiplied by 0 is just kaput, gone. You won't see it. So there's the thing with that. You will see nothing. Okay, so that is why this is just showing this almond shape that it's created right here, because we're multiplying this with this. So if I crank down the values and set this to 0.5, so it's gray, you'll see that this is creating an almond shape, but it's not white. So if you think about it, it's just because like gray is 0.5, but 0.5 by 0.5 is halving that value, right? It's giving it half the value, so it would be 0.25. So if you see this circle, that's purely white, that's set to 1. So this is the same as using this grayscale color 1. This one is using this, which is 0.5. And this one is getting this, which is 0.25. You can see that it's essentially the exact same color. If you were about to do the same with this, so create a blend node right here and multiply it by itself, like that, let's set this to multiply, you see that it becomes even more gray in that sense. So if I set this to the half of it, it's not like something really difficult to understand, but you see that it's become even darker than that, I think, or this might be my eyes just messing around with me. I think that's darker even, right? So just because it's how much is it? It's no, because I halved that, but it's not half it. Okay, it's not half. I just halved 0.25, but it's not halving it. It's 0.25 by 0.25, which I think it should be like, my head hurts. Too much math. 0.777, something like that. Yeah, I think that's much closer to it, right? 0.25 by 0.25. All right, so it's 0.625, which is close enough to what I found. So yeah, it's the exact same color. That's the shade. So yeah, you'll see that how everything is getting multiplied, and it's just essentially maths, but being applied to this example. So let's check the other example with these ones, which is this one. All right, so you can see that we are multiplying right here. So we're multiplying this image by this color, using this as a mask. So you can see the effect that this creates. If I remove the opacity, so you'll see that all the image is being multiplied by this color. So this acts like a color tint. If I set this to just be purely white, so I remove that, it's just the exact same image, right? But if I move this around now, you'll see that this is just tinting the whole image. And it's pretty nice. That's how you tint images also in shaders and stuff. As for the saturation goes, that's like the intensity of the tint that you're applying, and the hue is just changing the color. The value is changing the darkness, and so yeah, that's mostly how it works. You can also multiply this by kind of like black to make it super dark in the texture, which is great. It's the exact same thing as just applying levels right here and then turning this up or turning this down like that. So you'll see that it's super similar to what we just had. All right, and now let me connect the opacity again and set this to that purple color again, which is the same as this one. So let's just copy and paste right here. And you'll see that this is the result that we are getting. If I now transform this mask, you'll see what is going on. It looks like there's a liquid of sorts that's kind of starting to tint that texture. So that's the thing with the multiply. All right. Now let's follow up with the add sub. Add sub is not that used. I mean, multiply, really used. Subtract, really used. Add, really used. Let me find the ones that are really used first. Max is really used, especially when it comes to textures with gradients that you want to make a blob of in the real-time VFX texture. Minimum darken, not that much, but for some cases might be useful. Switch, not that much. Divide, not that much. Overlay, not that much. Screen could be useful for some cases, and I've seen it used quite a bit. Soft light, not that much. And that's mostly it for the blend modes. You'll see that that's the totality of them right here. You have to scroll a bit to find the last ones, just in case you can find them. But yeah, that's the main thing. The ones that I use the most are add, subtract, multiply. Those are the base ones. Then max, and then I would say maybe screen, but that's about it. So I think I'm not gonna be explaining all of them in a lot of detail, just because it's something that's not really useful for you to know right now. But you can deep dive into what the blending modes do and whatnot. So you can click here on Learn More, and then let me just show you. Okay, you can click here in Learn More, and then you'll see that examples coming soon. Okay, no, I see no example substance. Please show me some examples. And then you can go to the dedicated page to the blending mode. So you can access the add sub. So you can see what these are doing. It's super well explained, but still difficult to wrap your head around them if you don't have examples to get to know those. So as for the add sub, for example, foreground pixels with a value higher than 0.5 are added, and foreground pixels with a value lower than 0.5 are subtracted. So essentially, they are using this kind of like grayscale value thing to display that this image of a bird is being like, the values that are white are being added respective to the background pixels, and the values that tend to be more towards dark are being subtracted. So this has some applications in terms of real-time VFX, but I said, like, this gets results that sometimes are really messed up, and it's really difficult to trick around it. So it's not used that much. But for example, Max right here is one that it's not really shown in this example right here. It's not, you can't really see it, but let me just show you what you can do with Max. All right. So Max essentially will make it. I don't know if you had time to read it right there on the blend mode examples, but essentially it's just taking the maximum value and just kind of keeping it on top of everything. So you'll see that I've got this white circle here, another white circle at the right, using the max. The two of them are kept. With lower values, both of those are lower values, but they are still kept. So what's going on right here? All right, so now there's one that's purely white, one that's kind of gray, and then you see that the white one is kept on top of the gray one. So it's like saying, hey, with max, you're always going to be getting the foreground image on top of the background in terms of like the value intensity, the kind of lightness. The more white something is, the more that it will be displayed on top. That makes it so, let's say that you've got two different shapes like that. Okay, let me just switch this to be a cone, which is a radial gradient. That's super nice. If you can use the fresh histogram scan, would be better for this case. You can see that this is just a gradient and it looks like this. All right, so I can transform this. Maybe like this. I can make it so it's not tiling. Okay, no tiling, and I can duplicate this like so, and then I will use a blend node, and I will switch this to be using the max. So something like that. I'm gonna move this around, so it's something like around here, for example, like that. And now you'll see that by using max, we are getting like this mix of the spheres at the middle, and it's like blending. So now if I use the histogram scan again, you'll see that this is using this as an erosion, and it's not like kind of like cutting, it's respecting the shapes and just eroding from the center, the most bright values of those, until the middle, right? So just like that, shrinking from the origin. If I were about to send this blend node, which is using the max, into the add, for example, you see that this is causing some weird issues right there. We are getting that mix thing in the intersection between those, and it's kind of creating that elongated shape that looks pretty bad. And that's just due to the fact that you're using an add operation. Same with the multiply. You would be multiplying this by the other one, and as the only intersecting bits that are colliding are low in value, you're getting this, which is kind of super low. So by using outer levels, you can bring that up, but you'll see that you have essentially lost the other ones because you're multiplying this bit right here by 0, because in this other image here, this is 0. So it's multiplying white by black, and it's getting black. So that's why you're only getting the part that you were supposed to like be conflicting there on the merge. So by using the other blend modes, just subtract, you're subtracting one from the other. And by using screen, for example, you're also getting a similar result to the add right here, but it's a bit more toned down. So all of these cases won't allow us to create a nice eroding shape for real-time VFX. If you set this to min, you're only getting the intersection, for example, but with that gradient right there, which might be interesting in some uses. But you know, as for the time being, if you stuck to max, you get this. And by doing this, you can make it so by using another blend node like that and using another shape like this, you'll be able to create a multitude of. Has this been set to? Nope, has been set to max. And now I'll be able to kind of like stretch this and elongate it. And it kind of looks like you're sculpting something, right? It looks like you're creating a new shape out of nothing. And now if I use the histogram scan, you'll know that, yeah, you'll see that everything is eroding from the origin, respecting the shapes of all the other things. And this is a really important effect because it looks really similar to the Voronoi, and I'm just explaining this to you because that will be useful in the long run. You'll see that this is super similar to this, right? And that's just because that's the main thing with how the Voronoi noise works. It's just it's not quite that, but it's a bunch of spheres scattered around, and then they use this kind of math operation, so they are all mixed together, and one on top of the other and one on top of the other. So if you keep on going and doing this, you will get the how did I just connect that? Nope, this one and this one, thank you. So you'll get the same result as you would get by using Voronoi type of noise, because you can see in some intersections, this is more softened out right here, but in others it's more separate, so you're getting a bit more profound like depth like here. So yeah, that's the exact same approach that you would be using to create a Voronoi. And cool thing is that you can use the inverted version of that. So if I invert this, you see that this is creating now some noises that I can use with a histogram scan. Histogram scan, please. Yep. And now you can use this to have this shape and erode it like that, which looks pretty nice, pretty great, especially if the Voronoi has like a bigger scale like that. And so kind of goes like shoo, shoo. So it disappears like that. All right. So that's, again, one of the examples in which you could use the, I'm just going to save this just for the sake of you having it and you being able to play with it. Let me just, again, save that so you can get it too. All right, let me save this right here. And that's about it for the max. That's a mode that keeps the highest values. So the main reasoning behind those intersections being respected is that they should go into 0, they should go into dark, but at 0.5, which is the like conflicting level, because the values can find a value that's higher than the other, so it doesn't know what to do, so it keeps all the values to 0.5 at that middle point, and it's kind of like going only upwards from there, right? That's the main thing with it. As for the minimum, just you can see that in this case, it's keeping that bit here, which is the intersecting bit, right? But if I set this to like a lower value, it's keeping the intersecting bit, but with lower value. And if I use a higher value and a lower value, instead of getting this, I'm getting the intersective bit, but with lower value. So you can see that it's pretty crazy. And just by seeing this, what math operation do you think that would be happening for this to kind of like be like that? I just want to just to think about it and sit with yourself for a bit and think about it and try to wrap your head around what might be going on here. And then you can jump into the learn more right here. And then you can just, again, access the dedicated page, go to minimum, and then you'll go like, oh, so it's picking the lower value between the background and the foreground, which makes sense, right? This is the way that you should be approaching anything, learning anything, especially in Designer, because it really there's a bunch of variables around. So if you see something, first think about like, how would I approach that? How would I create something like this? Why is this working, right? Let's think for a bit, and that's the best way to learn. Just trust on me on that one, because it's the quickest way for you to get to know what you're doing. So think about it. It's keeping the minimum part right there, right? It's like, okay, but the minimum, what do you mean by the minimum? So this one has black bits, so it's keeping all the black bits, right? It's keeping only the black bits. It's not going to keep the white. So it's kind of like saying, hey, white, I don't want you there. Okay. But it's keeping like this dark side at the outmost part, right? Forget about the white. The white is just the part that's not going to be existing at all. And then right here, it's just keeping this, also this dark right here. So if you add this dark and the other dark, one on top of the other from these two images, it's pretty weird and it's pretty difficult to understand at first, but you're getting this intersection because you're only keeping the darkest parts of the image. So you're getting a cutout shape using these two dark parts, the black parts, and it's creating this image, right? I know it's kind of difficult to understand. If I move this around, you'll see that since this and this are the same right now, we're getting this white shape, right? But if I move this around, okay, like at about here, and then preview this, I'm getting this shape because it's the shape that's intersecting. Kind of difficult to understand, I know, but just play around with it and you'll get to know it in super quickly. So same thing here, because we are getting this lower value white, we are getting a lower value type of intersection. But here, you see that we are using a white and a gray one. But since, remember, it's only getting the darkest values and only preserving the darkest values, it's finding that hey, in this intersection, there's some white. I don't like this, so let's just keep the lower value, which in this case, it's this one. And so that's why you're seeing this gray intersection right here, okay? So that's the thing with min and darken, and that's why if you set this to be using min right here, you'll only get the intersection and it's removing everything else. That's just due to the fact that it's saying like, hey, all of these colors that you've been using right here are super bright. I don't like that. I just want darkness in my heart. So it's just keeping the darkest values that have some kind of importance and intersection right there. So that's the main thing. And yeah, that's why you can see the intersection right there. You are not seeing the other dark values right there because you're just comparing this image with this image. All right, so you're just getting this intersection. You're not getting the intersections for all the other bits just because this is comparing these and this as values, right? It's not doing the operation in any of the rest of the image. That's the main reason. Okay, so yeah, setting this back to max. And there's about it. The switch node. Sorry, I just had to cut this. The switch node will make it so Satoru Iwata will come personally to your house and grant you a Nintendo Switch for free. Reggie Fils-Aime will come to your house. I'm sorry. No, the switch node is essentially the opacity node. It's the exact same as the opacity node. But the thing with this is that the switch node makes it so if you set this to opacity 1, it won't render the other opacity thing. So it's not computing it. Okay, you're not getting any maths operation done on it. So if you set this to opacity to 0, like that, you're only gonna be calculating this in the program and not this. So this is only useful if you have a bunch of those in your graph right here in Designer and want to switch from one to the other. That's about it. That's just to compare nodes. Let's say that you've got like a crazy node operation, let's say all of these nodes at once, okay? And then you switch, like that, you use a blend, and you set this to switch, like that. And so this is used like as a switch, yeah. So it's saying like, hey, don't compute this. I don't want you to be calculating this at all times. Just compute this one. So compute this or this, depending on if you set this to opacity 1 or opacity 0. So it's like saving resources on your computer. That's the only reason why you want to use a switch right here. The divide, surprisingly, is going to divide. And by the way, my OCD is really triggered. I hope your OCD is not triggered by this, but okay, 3 squares as space. Thank you. So the divide is going to divide. Pretty easy to understand. So to get this shape, I'm dividing this by this, and so I'm getting this. So if you think about it, it's like the subtract node right here. You can see that we are getting the same results, but in this case, it's just inverted. Again, this is working because I'm using black and white textures and not actual color textures. So if I was about to use colors for this ones, this is the add sub, this is the screen. So let me just switch this to divide, and you'll see that I'm getting a similar result to the subtract one, but I'm not getting the negative type of values into it. I'm not getting that much into the dark areas, but it looks more like an add type of blending mode, but with the colors being inverted, right? That's how it looks. It looks like radioactive thing has happened right there. So that's the main thing with the divide node right there. It's just dividing. It's an operation that's not that much used in real-time VFX, but it's just there. Overlay, it's a strange type of blending mode that combines multiply and screen blending modes. So the values from the background image that are below 0.5, so below that middle gray, are being multiplied. So it's a multiply operation for those. And the values that get higher than 0.5 up until white, they're getting a screen operation right there. And so that's like overlaying, like it's a given name, but it kind of looks like that. It's kind of look like it's overlaying this image on top of this. So you see that it kind of looks like only the values that go from 0.5 upwards are getting represented in this image right here, right? So if I were about to like kind of clamp those, something like this, you'll see that this is kind of similar, right? Kind of looked like this essentially, and it looks like this is being put on top of that. The thing with the white pixels there is that they are using the contrary. They're using like maybe something like this. Okay, and you can see that that's the thing that's happening right there. It's not that much coloring right there, but it's more like that. So you can see the difference. This is for the background. You can see the same as the background, and this is for well, not the background. This is for the dark pixels, and this is for the white pixels, like the circle, the white pixels. So you can see what is going on with this. It's essentially doing this type of thing with levels. I haven't seen this represented anywhere on the internet before. I don't know if I've come with this just straight out of my head, but I think it's a pretty useful way to display how this overlay is working right here. And I've created a couple examples here, so you can see that if I turn the levels up like that, so if I crank this like that, I'm having all of those disappear because they're not being blended, because they are not going into the 0.5 range value that there is to blend. So you can see that that's why it's being like that. And if I crank this down, you see that it's only being displayed right here, but the dark pixels are displaying nothing, right? So that's the main thing with this. This is like this, but only shown in this circle. So it's essentially this. It's like a multiply operation. You can see that right now if I grab this and place this there and just set it like that, okay, something like that. And I set this to be multiply, I'm getting the exact same result, right? I'm getting the exact same. And now if I get this other overlay node and set this so it's like that, you see that this is essentially as using the screen operation right here. So you see that it's the exact same thing. Let me just pause here for a bit because I want to organize this a bit better because it's a bit of a mess. So it's just a bunch of nodes, so it's kind of difficult to manage. Alrighty then. So you can see that this is the exact same as the multiply, and this is the exact same as the screen. Awesome. So now you can see the actual overlay and the examples that use the overlay with an image that's more like that, which creates the multiply, and the overlay with an image more like that that creates the screen blending mode. Overlay mixes screen with multiply. There's that. The screen mode is kind of a crazy mode because you won't be able to grasp what it does just from the screen name, right? Screen? What do you mean by screen? Now imagine a multiply operation, right? So 1 by 0 is 0, etc. Imagine that, but being inverted, the inverted result of that. So demultiplying. I'm not saying dividing, I'm saying like demultiplying. It's kind of crazy. Let me just create a couple Gaussian noises here with the auto levels feature on, just in case. And yeah, I can use those to display what I'm about to show you. So how can I also do this? So maybe with this shape right here. So maybe a cone, all right, that could be okay. Now let me blend this. So, okay, let's switch this to screen. And you see that this is the effect that we are getting, right? Instead of kind of like multiplying, so this shape gets multiplied by this, and you know the dark bits are not shown right here, and so the dark bits right here are fully eroding the mask right here. So even if the brightest part is this, you can still get some dark pixels right there. The screen node will make it so it's kind of like, okay, let's add this type of shape on top of this, but let's keep the maximum amount of values possible from this image too. So we're not getting any dark edges. We are getting the brightest spots here at the middle. We're still getting some detail right there. So it's kind of like right there in the middle, right? Now to achieve this, the thing that the screen blend mode does is how would I represent this? Okay, so essentially you're getting the inverted like that. Okay, so you're inverting it, and then you're getting this one, this shape. You're also inverting it. Okay, now you're multiplying those. Why am I searching for multiply as if this was a shader based environment? Okay, so now you multiply, so you're getting this, all right, and now you're inverting this again. That's how you get the screen blending mode. You don't actually need to know that, but in real use case scenarios for shaders and whatnot, you might want to use this to keep detail on some, texture that might be up there, maybe as a noise type of feature that needs a mask. So it's like, it would be super case specific, but that's the way how you actually approach this. Okay, let me do this with the, you can see that it's essentially the same, okay? Let me do this with a colored image, maybe like this one, okay? So I can get to show you in terms of color. So that would be, okay. Just copying this and copying this again, okay? Setting this to screen, like that. And you can see that it's like I'm a ghost. Nice. And so I'm gonna invert this. Invert the color. I don't need this one for now. Invert that one also. Invert color. Nice, pretty amazing. And then I'm again searching for multiply. That just professional deformity. I don't know how to call it, but like, yeah, professional issues. And then you set this to multiply instead of screen, and you can start to see that this will become the screen if I invert it. So I'll invert this, and it's essentially the same. Right, it's purely math based. It's you know completely subjective. The screen name, it's just subjective. But yeah, that's what's going on with this. It's an operation that does that. Again, not that used in terms of real-time VFX. Try it out. Try out if it works nicely on you. Maybe using a blend here, and then you want to use another Voronoi that's not inverted and the scale is a bit more, and then you want to use the scale and screen here. So you'll get this result, and then you can get like an auto levels of sorts. So maybe to get this texture, I don't know. It's completely up to you. I would suggest just playing around with it, but it doesn't mean like, yeah, the screen node it's not that useful, I think, for in this case to create procedural noise textures and whatnot. Okay, for the soft light, I think that I'll maybe have to create something that's more representative than this, because you're not getting that much out of this. Okay, but let me just get one of these ones, maybe that one, and I think I'll create like a tile, like a generator. But it doesn't need to be generator, please. Please. Okay, crazy. Tile generator grayscale. Thank you. Okay, now I'll create a square. X amount would be maybe 5, X amount 1. And now I want to use the luminance by number. So I'm creating this type of, color stairs right here. Just gonna be using an auto levels to create it so it's more pronounced, and then I'm gonna use another blend and gonna be creating the soft light so you can see what it's doing. And as you can see, this is not color, so I'm just gonna set it like that. And okay, that just goes to show. So opacity 0, you can see that the bits of the image that are kept as is are the bits that are purely 0.5. You can see that there's a bunch of blend modes that are based on that 0.5 threshold. So something that goes upper than 0.5 and something that goes lower than 0.5 are affecting the image, right? In this case, if I switch the gradient right here, you can see that it's getting a different result, right? That's because it's important. The image that's in the background is the one that it's affecting, that's being affected by the image on the foreground, right? So the order is really important in this one, and you can see that the darker the color, even if it's that kind of like black, super black, it's not affecting it that much. It's not like a multiply, which would make this go like just purely dark like that, and that's the only normal bit because that's Lisa is the only one on the white part of the image right now, so it's not being affected at all. If I set this to subtract, you'll see that only Jisoo is getting not affected by it now. But if I set these to soft light, you see that both Jenny and Rose are not being affected by this at the middle. So the thing with this is that the soft light will make it so the darkest bits are bringing down the lightness, bringing the darkness up in the darker bits of this image, and the brightest bits of this mask will be bringing up the lightness right here in the background image. It's kind of hard to understand again by just thinking about it, but you can throw this into your mix and see if it works nicely. So when you switch this around, you see that the black or the purely white bits are not being affected at all, and that's just due to the fact that it's looking for bits that are not super contrasty to be affected. It's just lightening them up a bit and darkening them up a bit. So if there's nothing else that can be lightened up or darkened up, it's not going to be doing anything. So you can see that only the values in between are the ones that are affecting that. So yeah, that's the thing with this. That's difficult to understand and convey. Let me just move this one a bit down. So maybe along here on the soft light. All right. Whew, we've been. It's been like an hour, I think, and we've only gone through half of it. Now I'm joking. We are about to finish with this lesson, but yeah, it's been really daunting. I know. Take a deep breath, drink some water, and let's go deep dive into the rest of the lesson. So you can see that this is the Oppa Gangnam Style. I don't know why I named it like that. I think that's because of the opacity. So we're using the checker to debug. So these two different checker textures here, this is quickly showing you the opacity, right? So it's switching between this and the other textures using this transform shape, and I can move the shape around, and you see that the effect that this is creating. I made this before kind of like explaining also the opacity on the other examples. So that's why I included it here, but feel free to play with this and switch the shapes. So maybe from a brick to a disk, so you can see the effect that that creates. All right, then this is using this shape, and it's blending them using a subtract. So it's, let me just remove the, no, not remove the opacity, maybe what disconnect it. Okay, so you see that this is having this subtract something from it. So it's getting darker in that bit. So it's essentially this, but it's subtracting from the square. And if I use this opacity now, you'll see that this is only affecting the downmost part of it. So it's the half, from the bottom half, it's just displaying, and from the other half, it's not being displayed at all. And that's the main thing with this. I can move this around, and you see that it's creating this cutout shape. You can easily understand opacity with that. Okay, this is the exact same principle. But in this first case, I'm just using this to remove, well, not to remove, but I'm getting this square, and I'm getting this, and I'm kind of like copying by using this opacity. So I'm just representing that circle right there. But if I was about to move this like that, you'll see that it's also being represented in the dark parts, but you might not want that to happen. So you can use the exact same square to keep the opacity relative to the square. And so when I move this, it's just going to be kept inside the square like that, because we're using this as an opacity. Okay, another quick example for you to be able to understand that. And as far as this goes, I've already shown you that, but we're using this texture, and we are blending it using this permanent noise with this color. So we are copying this on top of this by using this. The whitemost part of it will copy the purple color right there, and the darkmost part of it will be the one that's keeping the most amount of texture right there. And in this case, it's inverted, so it's the contrary, but in this case, it's the whitemost part of it copying on top of that. So you can see that there's dark there, so yeah, the image should be kept there. That's essentially what's going on. And this is the exact same thing, but it's another layer. So I took this and placed the same type of procedure on top with another color and another type of texture, and that's why this is the result that's being created right there. This looks like Sully from Monsters Inc. So opacity with different blend modes. Feel free to play around with those here and there, test them, test the ones you like the most. And then I have quickly created this logo here by using the techniques that we've already learned. So by using this, I'm using a blend node let me just disconnect this. So yeah, it's kind of easier to understand. You can see that this is going into the opacity, and I'm blending between black and red. So I'm kind of coloring this circle like red. So that's the thing. I'm doing the same, but for orange. So I'm coloring this orange, and I'm blending those two using the add linear dodge type of mode. Okay, so the add node, you'll see that it's kind of mixing them both, but it's creating that intersection in the middle that has a bit of orangey tone to it, which is not ideal, right? So you could also use any of the other ones, like just to try it out, multiply or switch or overlay, or just you can place your mouse on top of this thing here and use the scroll wheel to switch between all the different modes, so you can see the options that this gives you pretty quickly. I think in this case, the best way to achieve this would be, instead of using the add as such, I would suggest maybe using the max, which will avoid that orangey type of blendy color right there, which might be difficult to see if you're daltonic. I'm sorry about that. If you're colorblind, not daltonic, I think that's not the name in English. So if you're colorblind, it might be a bit difficult to see. But I think that's better because it's a better color representation in a sense. And it's keeping the highest value. So because this red right here, this red color, you can see in the lightness of it, it's 0.9, and this purple, this orange is 0.96. It's higher in the value, and so it's keeping those pixels on top of the red ones. That's why you're seeing that, because we are using max, okay? And then I'm blending this with this intersection that's created using the minimum mode, the minimum blending mode, which is using this, and it's connecting this to the blend, and it's creating this shape right here that I'm tinting this color, and it's creating that almond shape intersection color right there, which in fact makes it so it's like this logo right here. I think you might have already recognized it, and this is the new logo, I think, because they had another one before in which you would have like something intersecting like that. But yeah, that's a fun thing, just an example for you to be able to play around and understand. And as for the last thing, for the blending lesson, the blending order is important because it will give you different results if you're especially using a bunch of nodes and down the line. So this example is just a trail, and this trail is different if we blend before or after. You'll see that there's a bunch of detail being lost there. So where's the blending happening in this example? The blending is happening before. You can see that there's the blend node, and what I'm actually doing is using this texture, I'm subtracting from it using this curve, or either this gradient linear. So I'm just getting this effect by blending and subtracting from it. So that's why at the rightmost part, it looks like it's fading away, which is great. Then I'm deforming it, and then I'm just applying some post-processing to make it look like this. But then again, instead of blending at that point in the chain, if I were about to keep modifying this and then applying post-processing and whatnot, and then blending it with the exact same subtract thing that we've done, you see that the effect is super different. Maybe not super, but it's kind of different. And it's important for you to know that depending on where you put the blendings, you will cause this ripple effect of the texture looking one way or the other. So it's up to you completely to getting to play with this and getting to know the one that you prefer, right? And I think that's about it for the blend node. It has been quite a long lesson, but I think that I have given you my 2 cents on the whole thing of blends and the blend node and the blending modes and everything that has to do with it. If you still have questions, resort to the documentation online. Hopefully Substance will add some examples in the near future. Hopefully they will take some inspiration from this lesson, but who knows? Let's just hope that sometimes in the future they will get to work for a bit. But yeah, that has been a nice lesson to record. I had fun with it. So hope to see you in the next lessons, and yeah, see you around. Bye.